Okay. Welcome to this meeting of the full council of the Isle of Wight Council on Wednesday the 23rd of February 2022. Welcome to all councillors, staff, members of the public, the media and anybody else who I haven't mentioned. I need to go through the emergency procedure. There are no planned fire drills that I'm aware of during this meeting. If you hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is via the signpost or set of stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building, walk across the inner car park around the building to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. The lifts cannot be used in the event of an emergency. Please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it's safe to do so by a council member of staff. Can I also request that all mobile phones are either switched off or on mute? And can I also just remind everybody who speaks, you need to use the microphone in front of you. Okay. Before I go on to the formal agenda, just to inform you, I've agreed the request of the Director of Finance that we advance item 7 on the agenda, which is the report of the Chairman of the Audit Committee. I've agreed to take that between items 5 and 6, i.e. that's after the Leaders' Update report and before the Budget and Council Tax Setting papers. Okay. That's because it's important that it is dealt with. And as we all know, this is a budget council, and although we've got 4 hours, I'd like to make sure we've finished with a budget by 9 o'clock. Okay, thank you. Right, item 1, minutes. To confirm as a true record, the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of January. Are they agreed as a correct record? Thank you. Thank you. All agreed? Can you please show? Thank you. I did miss one thing. I haven't asked for any apologies. I was told about 2 hours ago there were none, and it looks pretty full in here. So everybody's here, which is great to see. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any? No declarations of interest. Okay. Item 3, public question time. This is a maximum of 15 minutes for written questions, of which we have none, and 15 minutes for oral questions. Questions can be asked without notice, but to guarantee a full reply, a question must be put, including the name and address of the questioner. We've been advised of one oral question prior to the meeting, which is from Councillor Cameron Palin of East Cowes, who wishes to ask a question about glyphosate. Mr. Councillor Palin.
Thank you, Chair. As the Vice Chair of the Allied Green Party, I'd like to publicly state our disappointment in the decision made by Island Roads to use glyphosate once again. The use of this deadly weed killer not only harms our natural environment, but also species such as insects, bees and lizards, and many more. Island Roads have used the excuse that this is down to a mere 282 complaints since glyphosate stopped being used over 2 years ago. In contrast, we have seen over the last week over 3,200 people sign a petition to stop those. So can the Cabinet Member for Transport and Infrastructure please explain why he supported Island Road's decision to begin using this again? And can the Cabinet Member for the Environment update us on his views? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palin. Councillor Bacon, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair. I think the question was directed initially to the Cabinet Member for Transport.
Okay, fair enough. Councillor
Palin
Palin referred to the Cabinet Member for the Environment, which I understood you were, but Councillor Jordan. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. The issue of using weed killer, of course, is a contractual one. It's not an ecological debate. As much as I'd like to be able to confirm we would take that binary decision not to use weed killer, the PFI contract actually calls for its use. And to change that would require a waiver or a deed of variation of the contract that would need both parties to agree to. Present, we've not agreed a potential way forward that is sustainable or agreeable outside of contractual obligations. Cannot comment on what the previous administration did with regard to agreeing to allow a non-contractual approach, but we are in discussions over performance standards that fell short of contractual requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Palin?
Yes, Chair. Across the country, we've seen many councils successfully manage weeds using different approaches, including in Looe, where the district council, made up of Greens, Liberal Democrats, Independents and Labour, use a hot water spray method to manage their weeds. This shows there are successful alternatives to glyphosate, ones that aren't harmful to our environment and more effective than the manual weeding. So can the Cabinet Member for the Transport explain why Island Roads could meet this contractual obligation 2 years ago, but cannot now? And can the Cabinet Member for Transport and the Cabinet Member for the Environment commit to tackling this issue together, retract their support for Island Roads, and look at alternative methods mentioned? And finally, I'd like to throw my support behind the leader, Laura P.C. Wilcox. Thank you.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you for the second question, and of course we're continuing to press for a better solution, and we're continuing also to search for a sustainable alternative, and we discuss all these issues with the contractor at the highest level. It's been part of discussions with most senior levels of management in the contractor, and it continues to be so. We are determined to get a more sympathetic approach at the very least. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. I would obviously support the comments that have been made by Councillor Jordan. I share Councillor Palin's disappointment that this has happened, but I understand the reasons which I think Phil has set out. What I certainly do support with my environment hat on is looking to better ways to do this. The hot water alternative was mentioned. That does have difficulties because while it deals with surface weeds, it does not necessarily deal with what is under the ground, which can potentially undermine road infrastructure through roots, etc. What I can say, though, is that having spoken to the Director of Neighbourhoods this afternoon, we are supporting careful, selective use of glyphosate while it is still, it seems, going to be used, and particularly being mindful of wildlife where they may be affected. But certainly I would like to put my weight behind seeking better alternatives. It is plain that glyphosate cannot be the only way to deal with weeds. I know that it's a problem that has come up in various councils across the country, again, as has been indicated by the question, but it still seems that research is in early stages, but certainly we would support the research to find an effective alternative that is better for our environment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other oral questions from the public gallery? No? Okay. We'll move on. Item 4, Chairman's official announcements. You've had a report circulated from me yesterday. I've got nothing to add to that. We'll move on to item 5, Leaders Update Report. Firstly, to receive the Leaders Update Report of 5 minutes maximum, Councillor P.C. Wilcox.
Thank you. Since I wrote this report, I'm absolutely delighted, and I'd like to add it as another item, that to record that funding via the community safety from the PCC to do with specific projects for protection of women. That's just something that I'd like to add to my report. At the start of each leader's report that I have spoken here, I consistently remind councillors of the challenges we face. I prioritise the needs of our most vulnerable, those without homes, people in financial difficulty, and people with mental and physical health issues. My aim, along with my amazing group and some excellent support from Councillors Quigley, Nicholson, Pitcher and Garrett, is to keep prioritising those issues. I'm still concerned that there seem to be people who think that the way to act in public life and to try and make their case against those in public life by threats, bullying and intimidation, rather than presenting ideas, discussion and collaboration. For example, I know we have an issue at the moment that has caused a lot of upset, namely the fact that we seem to be using weed killers on our paths and streets, as Councillor Cameron just alluded to, over 3,000 reports of that. There have been a number of communications to us about this, but the most helpful ones are those that have not just voiced their opposition, but have suggested that we look to doing the best we can by examining more selective and targeted use of pesticides or researching alternatives. Doing that will mean we will have the best chance of resolving the problem in the best possible way, working together for solutions for our island. Nevertheless, it's unfortunate that we seem to have gone down a road in many areas based on adversarial approach, unpleasantness and conflict. We saw too much of this in the election last year. All we get from that is wasted energy, serious wasted energy and bad feeling, and we go nowhere. That is not supporting the island. That's not supporting our staff. Sorry. Okay. Arguing that one side is better than yours achieves very little. Looking to the bigger picture and finding solutions and trying to help will always be my approach. That is what the electorate seemed to be telling us last year. It is this sort of approach which has informed the budget which we are going to discuss later this evening. While I'm speaking here, I will say we might not have accommodated everything and everybody in what will be presented, but we have done our best to accommodate those who come to us positively and sought to create a framework for those who want to be in that future. Finally, as we know, this is the last meeting with my fabulous chief exec. I've said he's not just been my rock, he's been my mountain, and he sure has. And actually, it'd be quite nice if you could pay a bit of tribute to the Chief Exec, please, because this will be his last time. Thank you.
Okay, now an opportunity for questions to the leader on the report for up to 15 minutes. Are there any questions? Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. The leader talked about threats and unpleasantness in her report just now. Could she elaborate with a little more detail?
Didn't realise I had my microphone on. I think you'll find that I was talking about the glucophates and which I can't pronounce. Well done for and the weed killer. That's what I was referring to. Thank you.
Councillor Lucioni.
I had a fabulous experience with one of our Kickstarters in IT the other day, who was phenomenally great. I just wondered how many apprenticeships and Kickstarters we actually have within the council.
Thank you. I have to say I'm really proud about this. We've got 122 across the Isle of Wight Council and schools. How amazing is that? That's absolutely brilliant. I always say children are our future. You know, we're not going to be here in a few years' time, but they will be. And in addition to that, yeah, we have 45 at doing Kickstart, which is absolutely incredible, especially coming out of a pandemic. We need to focus people's minds now, and especially our youth. We know that there's been severe problems with mental health, and I think channeling through that through work is a really good thing. Thank you.
Councillor Pitcher. Darrell.
Thank you, Chair. Would the leader comment further on the government's recent Levelling Up white paper and the opportunities potentially available to the Isle of Wight, including through the Islands Forum, particularly as it is clear that most future extra government support will be channelled through this agenda?
I will. I'm just looking for a bit of paper, which it looks like I have not put in my other thing, which is a bit of a shame. Darrell, can I just tell you what an utter joy it was when you knocked on my door? And instead of coming with criticism and complaints, you came to me with a solution over the Levelling Up. Not just you, but other members of the public, very, very good members of the public. I'm absolutely delighted that we can work together, and actually, Darrell, that you're going to take the lead on this, that we can get to Westminster. We have to fight for the island's case. We do. We know in Levelling Up it's got this little thing about the island, about islands, but we need to really be banging on that door, along with the MP, if he will come with us, because it would be good to have that. And it was a ray of light coming in and knowing that we can actually work forward and get things done. So sincere. I have been in touch with civil servants to set out our role in the forum, as in John Metcalfe has, and they recognise that, you know, to try and get into the nitty gritty of the detail about how we can progress it. The island people deserve this. We've got to fight for this. You know, and I'm only 4'11", but I will fight for it because I think that the island people deserve it. So thank you for coming forward with a solution. Thank you.
Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Chair. Leader, you referred at the beginning of your report about the important funding for preventative work to tackle mental and physical violence against women and girls on the island. My question is in relation to the government strategy which was published last year on violence against women and girls, which actually emphasises the importance of direct experience, and particularly the leaders or women leaders in our community standing up against male violence against women and girls. What is your experience as a woman leader, and how would you show leadership in tackling this intolerable and unacceptable abuse against women and girls?
Oh gosh, Councillor Lilly. Okay, so what I would say is I've not been on the receiving end in my 20, well, I have actually been on the receiving end. Today, I received my little personal alarm that I now have to walk with, because this for any woman walking along the streets. I have young daughters who are too frightened to go out at night. That shouldn't be. This gives reassurance to people. I have seen what alcohol has done in relation to violence. I've witnessed that. I've had women come into me when I was running my business who had been given date rape. They remember nothing. They remember nothing. The humiliation. It took a lot for those girls to speak to me. And at one time it was absolutely terrible in Newport. So I do understand where this is coming, where it comes from. It's I'm really looking forward to this seminar, because I know that the money is directed at Newport and Ryde in the main, because those are the most issues. But you know, what can we say? Hashtag me too, because I know how my daughters feel, and it's a sad. I didn't have that growing up. They don't have their freedom. They don't have their freedom. I'll be doing all I can to support. Thank you.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you. Yes.
We've got a tight timetable.
Thank you. And thank you for adding that to your report, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Lee, for that question as well. My question is very simple. Leader, may I stand shoulder to shoulder with you on this, because this is a very, very serious matter that I've had to deal with in my 13 years being in public life. So I'm here with you, and anyone else who wants to join us, there's an open door.
Councillor Jordan.
Chair, I wonder if the leader would explain, at first I've seen it, of the alarm you've got there, Leader, whether, how did you come by it? Who provided that, or did you acquire that yourself?
I've been to the police station today because I am concerned for my well-being. I'm concerned for my family's well-being. This is reassurance. Really, it feels it's reassurance. No one should have to be in this position at all. And I know there are members across the chamber that have also been in this position. And it's not a nice one to be in. Thank you.
Okay, I've got nobody else, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the one I've brought forward. Item 7 on your agenda, the report of the Chairman of the Audit Committee regarding future external audit arrangements for 2023-24. Over to you, Councillor Garrett Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure members have read this paper with great interest and will be clamouring to join the Audit Committee at some future point in time. Audit may feel very dry and dusty, but it is the way that we have assurance that our money is spent well and in keeping with what the residents of the Isle of Wight would expect. Audit Committee did consider this issue very carefully, and we concluded that the best way to secure high quality external audit cost effectively was to take up the invitation of the public sector audit appointments. And so I would move the recommendation there at paragraph 4 that the Council accepts public sector audit appointments, PSAA, invitation to opt into the sector-led option for the appointment of external auditors to principal local government and police bodies for 5 financial years from the 1st of April 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. I'll formally second that. Are there any comments? Okay, we'll move on to the vote. Indicative. All those in favour, please show. Anybody against? Abstentions? It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, we come to the budget and council tax setting for 2022-23 and future years forecasts. The main part of the agenda in many ways, with a very structured approach to this within our constitution that I intend to stick to as rigidly as is possible. I've circulated to everybody the speaking times that are allowed, etc., with a very strict order for the speeches, summing up at the end, and every vote at the end will be a named vote. That's required. So I hope everybody's clear with that. For some of you, this is the first time you've ever done this. It was put in place to stop all the horse trading we used to have about 6, 7, 8 more years ago. I remember when budgets used to be presented on the night, which is quite interesting given how long we notice we get now. So, with that little preamble, we will move on to the first speech of the night, which is, well, not the first speech, it's just, I will ask the Leader of the Council to formally propose her budget and all amendments for debate. Can you do that, Councillor Pearson-Wilcox?
Yes, I propose to move my budget, but with withdrawing Councillor Dawes and Councillor Garrett's. Thank you.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Jordan, thank you.
To clarify that included the Conservative.
So just to clarify, that means that Councillor Daw and Councillor Garrett have both withdrawn their amendments. Yes. And I assume there will be explanations as to why that is the case. Yes. Okay, well, I look forward to hearing that. Therefore, we will move to the speeches, which firstly is the Leader of the Council. Councillor Pearson-Wilcox, you have 15 minutes.
Okay, so breaking with tradition, as leader, I will be reading the budget. As we know, in the past 4 years, it's always been handed to somebody else, but we don't mind breaking with tradition there. I must say thanks to Councillor Jarman, my cabinet members and the Alliance, Councillors Garrett, Quigley and Pitcher for their help in the budgets. I also pay tribute to the Conservatives because I know the time it takes to produce a budget. I think we've been working on it probably for 6 months. It's tiring, so thank you. We continue to live in the shadow of a pandemic and with great uncertainty at home and abroad. Coupled with our modest result from government following years of protracted discussions, it is clear that we must take command of our own destiny. And like Britain and Europe, shaking of the dependency on foreign gas, so we must necessarily reinforce our own vibrant and resilient island economy and hence secure a better future for all our residents. I cannot deny that there are many uncertainties ahead in the world and that the impact of those and the continuing failure by government to recognise the uniqueness and structural challenges of our very beautiful island exacerbate the difficulties presented to our already challenged economy. Great unknowns demand prudence, and whilst we must ensure our resilience against the unknown, so we must embrace an appetite for greater risk if our regenerative efforts are to succeed. We have provided future visibility and projections, but this is, in essence, a one-year budget to reflect those uncertainties. The budget proposed this evening resolves to commit significantly to regeneration, using our housing company as a catalyst to provide significant resources to our education system and to protect and uphold our frontline adult social services. It is a collaborative budget, embracing inputs from across the chamber, from online sessions, within the voluntary and business sector, from unions and staff, our fabulous representatives from our town and parish councils and the community councils. It has also benefited from an extensive consultation process, both online and face-to-face, that achieved a record over 1,000 resident engagements. It encapsulates their contributions by delivering proposals for large regeneration programmes, ensuring funding for environmental and coastal protection projects, and also by introducing a range of smaller initiatives in collaboration with those town, parish and community councils, such as our free parking trial in Newport and Carisbrooke and joint funding planning enforcement. In short, it is a budget that balances pragmatism and optimism to provide a route to improving the lives, the everyday lives of every islander, and securing best possible prosperity for our island. You will have noted the headlines proposals to tackle our homelessness crisis by the activation of our housing company and our registration as a housing provider. We are liberating our reserve towards providing 2.5 million as seed capital to our initiative, an immediate 3.6 million investment in securing relocatable homes to meet the most critical short-term needs, 1.4 million to improve the availability of accommodation for people with learning disabilities, and at least 25 million investment in providing homes, affordable island homes. It's essential that we protect existing homes and bring back unused properties to occupy. We are therefore proposing funding to bring abandoned buildings back into productive use through the use of compulsory purchase orders. With that, we do need more government powers, and we need our MP to be fighting to give us extra powers to be able to do that. We really do. It's also recognised by this administration that flooding is a major issue. And upon passing this budget this evening, the council commits 170,000 of the planned integrated transport plan capital budget, which adds to the network priorities and safety schemes, reference 54 in the capital programme at Appendix 5, to be allocated for prioritised flood mitigation works in Binsted. Finally. These substantial funds will be ring-fenced for the installation of rain gardens along the Greenway, the installation of underground storage tanks along the Mell to Sandpath footpath, and the flood mitigation works for Binsted as identified in the S19 report. Any funding remaining after completion to be returned to meet the highest priority transport needs of the council. Our progress will be regularly reviewed and accelerated if possible. I note and welcome even greater ambitions in the amendment proposal of the Conservative group covering future years, and trust they will do everything they can to enable us to make that increase possible in the budget next year. We are resolved to ensure that every islander enjoys the opportunity for a secure home, and by rebuilding our council tax relief scheme, to ensure that this council will not be the vehicle that drives residents into homelessness or unsustainable debt. We are proposing 2.3 million dedicated to children's services and significant investment in school infrastructure, a further 2.2 million for highway safety and improvement schemes over 2 years, and a range of measures to secure funding for local and economic regeneration activities. I hope that that 2.2 million for highway safety stops any more young deaths on this island. We've had too many. 3.7 million investment in adult social care and for the protection of frontline services has in particular been widely applauded. Our proposal for a 3.7 million investment in adult social care for the protection of frontline services. Protection of frontline services has in particular been widely applauded. The budget is predicted upon our renewed approach to supporting a full spectrum of changeable options, whilst maintaining a very affordable baseline offering, such as is the case with our crematorium and much appreciated white care services. These chargeable options must play their part in bringing economically viable without detracting from the lines. The renewed approach to commercial viability, the impact and the indicative savings from these optional services will continue to be subject to consultation and monitoring through our established committee process, paying specific regard to the potential financial impact to those on lower incomes. In summary, a budget centred upon 40 million capital investment programme and a realistic revenue model that is both deliverable and sustainable, a budget that expresses confidence and resolve, shows determination and brings hope and a route forward, together to rebuild, reinvigorate and regenerate our island for the benefit of all island residents and businesses. I commend it to you all and to all islanders. I never thought I'd have to be that grown up to read a speech like that, but thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The next speaker now is the leader of the Conservative group, Councillor Joe Robertson. You have 15 minutes.
Chair, thank you. I won't be taking 15 minutes, but we'll see how long it takes. As can be seen from our published proposals, they're not extensive in number, but they are important. We note the continuity in the current budget to the one that went before it. The previous budget, the last Conservative budget, set out an indicative indication that £3 million should be saved. And it's the Alliance administration who set out the detailed plan to do that. Nearly £1 million, of course, was delivered by decisions made by the last Conservative administration. And in general terms, I congratulate Councillor Jarman on his budget. It's sound, it doesn't raid reserves, and I also welcome that he engaged with me before this budget was published and that he met with me and senior colleagues on this side of the chamber to hear some of the reasoning and rationale behind decisions made by the last Conservative administration. So whatever the rhetoric and whatever Alliance members have said in public about a reset, the substance of this budget is in the main continuity, prudent, and I welcome it. Looking at our amendments, we believe this budget could be more ambitious and it could go further in a number of key areas. Those areas are planning and housing, access to public space and commitment to carbon zero, and staffing in a small but important area. There's concern on this side of the chamber, and I think at in the public at large, that the Alliance's policies on planning are at best confused and at times conflicting. We all agree, I think, I hope, that the island needs more housing, particularly for islanders, but that need to be houses built in the right places and affordable. In the first draft of the island planning strategy, certain brownfield sites were allocated as key priority sites. Since then, we've had announcements that some of those won't be key priority sites. And Councillor Stevens and I have discussed Camp Hill before. We are proposing that £60,000 is set aside for an independent review of brownfield sites across this island, so that we can make sure the council is making the very best use of brownfield land. I would hope that that is an amendment everybody could get behind and support. We welcome the proposed 25 million drawdown facility for building new council-controlled affordable homes for islanders. But enough hasn't been done on this in the past from administrations of both or all political persuasions. We think more money is needed over the next 3 years, so we propose increasing the drawdown facility to £40 million. Again, that money doesn't have to be used, but it would be there and available, and we're asking support on that. There has also been, for some time now, a problem with planning enforcement. COVID has also put huge pressure on council departments, but particularly the planning department. There is now recognised a growing backlog of planning applications and an inability to be able to keep up with planning enforcement reports much of the time. So again, we're proposing to ring fence £200,000 for increased staffing numbers in the planning department, to tackle the growing backlog of planning applications, more effectively resource planning enforcement, and to support the ambitious affordable housing plans. This reverses the cuts to planning staff made by the previous independent-led administration prior to 2017. And while on the matter of staffing, the budget proposes a cut of 25,000 to frontline staff in the call centre. Again, this is something that happened before 2017 and call waiting times spiralled. The last Conservative administration had to refinance and bring staff back into the call centre. We think this is a dangerous route to go down. There are enough islanders who still rely on the telephone, and it's a small amount of money that the Alliance are looking to save there of 25,000. We say, let's not do that. Let's cancel that cut. And finally, on access to public space and commitment to carbon zero, a lot said by the administration about the environment, and the cabinet member speaks with some passion on it, but it needs to be backed up by more action and money. So we propose to allocate 500,000 to restore and improve access paths to island beaches, and where possible go further and extend and improve footpaths, bridleways and rights of way. And also to help reach our commitment to carbon zero, provide 500,000 for planting trees and restoring hedgerows on council-owned land that's not suitable for housing. And it will also protect that land from speculative development longer term. And of course, hedgerows, as we know, will help mitigate the effects of flooding. The proposals have been published. Those are the main announcements in it, Chair. And I don't think there's anything in there that could be controversial. And I would hope that the Alliance might consider accepting those amendments. And we would certainly be prepared to back their budget if they did. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I'm now going to give each of the ungrouped members 3 minutes to give their views. I'm going to start with the one who withdrew his amendment, Councillor Garrett. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. First, my thanks to Chris Ward and Kerry Hubbleday, who helped me draw up an amendment now withdrawn, and to Councillor Jarman for engaging extensively with me about the proposals. It is, if this were the House of Lords, it would be known possibly as a probing amendment. It has probed the Alliance groups commitment to certain issues, most notably the 2 bullet points I put in the preface, which was to be fair and transparent and to address poverty as an overarching consideration. 3 of the indicative savings caused me great alarm. I don't think indicative savings like that should come through the back door of a budget. And I've won an assurance from Councillor Jarman, I hope that he will speak later and reiterate that will come through the process of consultation, scrutiny, cabinet report and vote at that time. And if there is evidence from the public that these are not viable proposals, then of course there is always flexibility that indicative savings can be substituted out with something else. I would remind the Alliance Group that they are a minority administration and are dependent upon the goodwill and support of others in this chamber who are fellow travellers but not members of that group. And I will hold you to account if you fail me on this. I'm passionate about how we address poverty on this island. I'm sure everybody in this chamber is deeply disturbed by the level of poverty and increasing levels of poverty on the island with the current situations with inflation and energy prices. In discussions with Councillor Jarman, he has assured me that he will revive a particular board on member poverty, which will be able to drive forward an anti-poverty strategy that will be able to bring together and have oversight of all of those funds throughout the authority that have a direct influence and an indirect influence on tackling poverty. One thing I will particularly watch out for, and I think it's slipped a little, is that cabinet reports are not yet routinely addressing poverty, and they must do so. I've given you a little bit of slack on the way, but only so far. You're nearly 1/4 of the way through your administration. My heart is with you. My mind, after persuasion, is with you. That is why I withdrew the amendment. But my vote cannot always be with you unless you deliver on the promises that you have made to me and to the members of the public on this Isle of Wight. I'm absolutely, categorically making that statement, that if you do not deliver, you will not have my support. But if you do, then you will maintain my support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Next, I'm doing these alphabetically. Councillor Pitcher. Darrell, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I find myself in a similar situation, really, to Councillor Robertson when he started his speech. As I find there's nothing unpalatable, distinctly unpalatable within this budget as presented. There are, of course, things that I don't fully agree with and would prefer to be slightly different. That's the same with any large budget, that you will never get everyone to agree on every single word. It does provide continuity. It does fit in with the medium-term financial strategy, and that seems like a sensible way forward. However, because the council have been quite successful over recent years in managing its budget, there is some chaff starting to work its way into these budgets, and 1 or 2 projects that are perhaps less than necessary that are starting to eat into the money that is available. And I'll be keeping an eye on that going forward. I'd like to thank again Chris Ward and Kerry Hubble-Day. I did originally write an amendment. I dropped part of it for one reason and another, the second part for a different reason. But I thank them for their help on that and steering me. And part of that was I would have preferred to have a smaller increase than the 1.99%, if at all possible. I thought I found a way. It turned out that the financial officer was not entirely happy with it, so I did not proceed with it, which I think is the right way. Looking at the Conservative amendment, again, I haven't got any major problems with it. It is very much along the same lines as the main budget. But I think that there was one item in it that I wasn't entirely happy with, which was the last addition for planting trees on green spaces. Now, I've got nothing against planting trees I think we need to be careful where we plant them to make sure we put them in the right place. And I think there are other ways of getting grant funding and securing the supply of those trees other than spending £500,000 of our own money on doing that. And I think that's one of those things that I just mentioned of the chaff starting to work our way in when there are other options. But looking for the future is clearly from the white paper, the levelling up agenda. And our own budget alludes to that on point 96.1, where it says the method of distribution in future years will be different, i.e. to support the levelling up agenda. That's there in black and white. We know that that's the future, and that's what I will be working on going forward. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Darrell. Next, Councillor Quigley. Richard.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Kerry and Chris as well. I didn't have an amendment, but they just seem like lovely people. I didn't want to feel left out. But also thank you to John as well for the help you've given me over the last few months who got elected. It's been very helpful, and I wish you well. I really do. And same as Councillor Brodie, I'm quite envious that you're going up country because it's very nice up there, but the island is the best place to be. No one wants to raise the price of anything. We all know that. No one wants to add to the current cost of living crisis we're going through. But services on the island are still reeling from the effects of a previous Conservative administration not increasing council tax for a period of years. We've also had scathing government cuts that have got us into a position where statutory services are in danger, and our promised island deal is still absent. When I got elected and the administration was formed, I chose not to be part of it, but I asked for three things. I asked for work on poverty, housing and community wealth building. On the first one, on poverty, the journey has started, thank you largely to Councillor Garrett with his previous amendments and currently adopted amendments. That journey is well underway. And I would like, as an addition, I would like every cabinet meeting to have at the top of its agenda the question, does this help solve poverty? Because I think we need to focus minds, and that certainly would do so. On housing, the money and proposed action is great news for truly affordable housing for islanders. And I will continue to work with Councillor Stevens to make that happen. On community wealth building, I thank Councillor Wilcox and Councillor Jones-Evans for giving me the opportunity to lead and responsibility to lead that project. The project is moving forward. It won't be quick, but it's an opportunity to create absolutely, truly transformational change on the island and every aspect of island life. I do send a warning though, for the next budget, I'm going to ask for money for county farms, and you'll all get bored to death of me explaining why, but I won't drop it, because as we enter both an energy crisis and a climate crisis, there is no or very few other ways as quick as county farms support it. Councillor Wilcox knows by now that I'm good, and I've had to realise that I'm very good at being awkward, and I'll continue to do so, but to that end I do support the administration's budget. That's me done.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, I'm now just going to invite, before I open it up, I'm going to invite Councillor Dorr if he would like to say anything about the amendment that he withdrew and perhaps why he's withdrawn it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was very conscious of the impact that it could have on two of the colleagues in Shanklin Ward, because essentially I'd be asking to take money from one project to another. Now, I must admit, I will say that in Stung Army, in fact, my colleagues across the way were very supportive as a whole, and I'd like to thank them for that. It's a very important one, this. It's our duty to protect our residents, and it's imperative that the flooding issue gets taken forward. The verbal commitment that the Alliance have given me, Councillor Jarman and the various other members, in my eyes provides exactly what Binstead needs and is considered acceptable to the ward that I'm proud to represent. It's better to be strength in numbers as well. Let me give you a little pointer of why I really think it is important as well. This is an email that I received from a resident. Our next door neighbours are carers at the weekend for two disabled children, allowing respite care for their families. On the Sunday of the flood, this is July 2021, whilst five of us were busy bucketing water desperately away from our front door, I was upset to hear and see the distress and fear of the children that our neighbour cares for. They were being lifted out through her lounge window, one of them in her wheelchair. They couldn't make a safe escape through the doors of the house due to the large amount of water surrounding the property. These children were cold, wet and scared. Members of the community took them to another house where they were comforted until it was safe for them to return to the house they are familiar with, their family home. These children live in constant fear of flooding every time it rains. And until these works are carried out, the risk remains the same. We are now on our third S19 report in Binstead. You should only ever get one before mitigation action is taken. It is absolutely unacceptable that it got dropped last time. So I'm building on the work of former councillor Ivor Warlaw, who put some steadfast people together to fight this. Funding was in place, it got pulled. Now it's back and we can crack on with the work in hand. So I'd like to recognise everybody that supported me on this. Again, Chris and Kerry, you're the heroes tonight. Thank you very much. And for all the other members that have offered their support, and from my colleagues on the side of the Alliance. So I will also add, Councillor Robertson is going to get an S19 report as well, as is Councillor Lucioni, and I will support absolutely anybody and everybody in the chamber that has to fight and defend flooding. We're in this together. It shouldn't be a divisive issue. I hope that answers the question, Chair, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ian. I'd just like to ask a question because it just puzzled me a little bit. Mr. Ward, perhaps you could respond for me. I think the leader said that flooding would now be funded by the transport element of the capital programme. Is that allowed?
Am I on? Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yes, it is, and in particular, I think there will be a number of issues associated with this proposal. Some of them may be that are related actually to transport matters. So if they are in particular around surface flooding, for example, or gully cleansing or items of that nature, then it's likely that some of the remedial actions associated with this proposal could legitimately fall as part of the transport portfolio.
Thank you. I just need to know whether you could do it, really, but thank you anyway. Thank you. Okay. Right, I'm going to open up everything to general debate now. We've got the proposal from the administration. We've got the amendment proposed by the Conservative group. Therefore, I'm opening it up to general debate for a period of time. I won't allow it to go on forever, but you've got up to 3 minutes to speak. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair. It's nice to see everyone here this evening. It's nice to have a full house for a change. It's lovely to see everyone. So I'm told pretty much weekly that people are relying on Regen and me in particular to bring in the money for the council. So I work hard with officers and my cabinet colleagues and colleagues across the council to do this. Now, as you know, we learned in the autumn that our application for East Cowes for the government's Levelling Up Fund was successful, and we are committing £389,000 to work with partners to deliver jobs and investment for the East Cowes Marine Hub. We are now working on a refreshed investment plan so we can respond to the next call for levelling up. And again, I want to thank Councillor Pitcher as well for the extra work he's volunteering to do on that. It's really very, very helpful. This is very important for the island to get as much money as we can for our ambitions. We're continuing our commitment to the vital work being done by the High Street Heritage Action Zones in Ryde and Newport as part of this budget. And also Innovation White Business Centre, which should be opening up in a couple of months' time, which will involve working with business advisors to help businesses, and businesses will have that space to be alongside each other, and will be getting support from Solent-based universities. We're also looking forward to Branston Farm opening, which is creating homes and jobs in an environment that respects and celebrates our biosphere. The Regeneration Directorate was set up in 2016-17 under the leadership of Councillor Bacon, and initially to use our council assets to create jobs, homes, bring in investment and income for the council. And this requires a lot of planning, resources, consultation and time. That is why much of what I'm doing in my role is a continuation of what's been set in motion in previous years. We must capitalise on this investment, and we're here for the long haul, as have previous people in this role, and obviously members of this council still here today. For instance, Newport Harbour has seen almost 4 years of work, and we are now at the point where the master plan moves to the stage of becoming a supplementary planning document, and that will be going out to consultation very soon. And this will give assurance to potential investors that we're serious about this very, very important regeneration project. Since I came into the post in May, I quickly recognised that cultural regeneration was a sleeping giant for the island's economy and our community. 30% of jobs on the island are actually in the cultural sector, the creative sector. Following on from that, we are now, as you remember, we are regional partners with Southampton, and they have just put their bid in because they got to the next round to be a city of culture. And Arts Council and England are working with us.
Thank you, Councillor Jones-Evans. Who wishes to speak next? Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I would just like to give the assurance to all, particularly Councillors Quigley and Garrett, that addressing poverty will be a key aim of this administration going forward. As members will have noticed, reports that we receive now routinely, or should routinely, mention climate change, mention young people, and mention support for the biosphere. And I think I've said it quite openly a few times that poverty should be similarly addressed in every report we look at. I would say that perhaps that undermines the importance for me particularly, I hope this whole council, of our UNESCO biosphere status, as that sees us supporting and aiming to develop and work with the UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals, because of course the first of those, top of the list, is no poverty. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, as a Ryde councillor and Mayor of Ryde, I do welcome Councillor Dawes' perseverance in tackling the issues of flooding. I support the Alliance budget, and I welcome Councillor Garrett's intervention on poverty, and totally support it, and glad this is embedded in the budget. Maslow's hierarchy of needs says to tackle mental health issues, you have to put a safe roof over people's heads. And housing is a lead in this budget, totally 100%, along with a complete commitment to supply housing by working with local parish and community and town councils at grassroots level. For the last year, I have flipped pancakes on Pancake Day, which I'll be doing next week, to raise awareness of poverty, particularly child poverty, and raise funds and awareness about the incredible work of the Isle of Wight and Ryde food banks. It is a sad world that we live in, that particularly after the pandemic, that many of our families rely on the food banks. After 2 years of the pandemic, food poverty is still a huge issue in the UK and Ryde and Newport and many of the areas of the Isle of Wight. New data released by the Food Foundation shows continued rise in food insecurity across UK compared with July 2021. The figure has risen by 7.3% in the past and 8.8% in just the last month. This represents a total of 2 million children who live in households that do not have access to a healthy, affordable diet. The wonderful Tidal Family Support and Contact Centre have issued daily a 200% increase in emergency food for Isle of Wight families since Christmas this year. And the Food Foundation calls on the governments to make food security central for the levelling of agenda. This budget is about tackling that poverty and also putting roofs over people's head. And as a champion and advocate for probably 40 years of my life in mental health across the world, right, I want to see a day before I die when we start to actually reduce poverty. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to note the £100,000 of additional funding that's been allocated in the budget to planning and the match funding with local councils allocated for planning enforcement. I have no doubt we can go further. I look forward to working cross-party to continue to resolve concerns widely held regarding planning matters and enforcement activities. Likewise, to then determine the appropriate increase in staffing. Councillor Garrett spoke from the heart on the matter of poverty, and I share his concerns and resolve. I wholeheartedly endorse his words. We have an ambitious plan to establish our housing company and to move forward. No proposal this evening changes the targets in the first year of that budgeting cycle, and I would very much like to find ourselves this time next year in a position to agree to accelerate as the Conservatives propose. I have no doubt we can work together on that proposal.
Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to remind colleagues of some of the stats that we've got from planning. Last year, 493 units were granted planning permission. Out of those, 445 were completed, and 123 of those homes completed were affordable. In the last few years, we've seen a very, very small level of affordable housing, sometimes in single figures. I think one year we saw no affordable housing built. What we have done in the last year to actually address the housing figures to make sure that some of them are affordable is a testament to our planning committee, our officers and our team, and also to local members as well. 38% of those houses built were on brownfield sites. So this Alliance administration are making real inroads to ensure that that happens. There are things that we need to improve. Extra support for planning enforcement. We've already invested money into planning enforcement, and we hope to go even further than that. And working with some of our town and parish and community councils, we are taking steps to actually address that. There are still more things that we can do. One of the areas that I'm looking at is the amount of we have had to pay for consultants within the planning department. We've had shortfalls that we've needed to catch up on. Those shortfalls need to be addressed, and my aspiration is to have many more staff working in-house to work for our planning department and for our communities, and who actually knows what's going on out there. That is so important for us and our community. I think what we need to do is also support our local planning authority. And again, there is work in progress here. And what I'm trying to do is I'm looking forward to strengthening bridges between our community, Isle of Wight councillors and our planning team to move that forward, because that is so important. And working with our planning committee, I hope that that can be further addressed in the next 12 months. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank Councillor Jarman for his work on this budget, which broadly speaking is acceptable. With our amendments, I think you may get support right across the chamber. I have a comment and a question, really. I did have a bit of a giggle when I read on page 31.28 regarding children's service and education, the claim that this council continues to invest significant sums in improving the fabric of Ireland schools. The claim is that £4.9 million being spent in the West White, £9 million in Sandown refurbishing the school. Yes, that work is going on, but it needs to be clarified, of course, that this was funds from central government obtained under in 2019. So to claim that this is part of the budget, I think is a bit misleading. As to the next point, really, point 29, where the claim is that primary and secondary schools see the budgets rise per pupil funding. That again, of course, is centrally government funding. And I think both of those claims really aren't budget news. My question, though, is regarding a cut 2021, 45,000, remove the participation officer. The rights to participation team is a real vital council service. It helps young people who may otherwise fall through the cracks. Importantly, acts as an independent advocate for our young people and helps ensure that any issues they feel they can't raise with social workers are adequately dealt with. Now, the narrative on the budget says the activity will be mainstreamed through the teams. So I'd like to know, please, how this will be done on a day-to-day basis practically. How will social services staff cope with any extra workloads? And how will the independent nature of that service be maintained without a participation officer? Thank you.
I'll try and get you an answer later on. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say that our budget proposals have been developed in accordance with the Alliance Administration's corporate plan. As you well know, that was accepted way back. I want to touch on a couple of the items that Councillor Robertson's mentioned, and indeed other councillors, if I may. But understanding the lines of debate, I shan't repeat what other people have said, hopefully. When we started to look at affordable housing and trying to take a look at the amount of money we should get permission to draw down on, I asked for 50 million. So I was stretching a point. I thought then, and I see the proposal from your good selves, and I quite like it, but as it was pointed out to me that this is a one-year budget, and we can come back and we can prove our prudence, we can prove where we're going, and then ask for more. And I think that's possibly the way. Then I've had protracted discussion, because I was the man who wanted 50 million in the budget for housing, but looking at a one-year budget and saying, okay, 25 million's good, a good start. Likewise with the company which was started over by your Conservative group, no problem with that, because when we delve back in time, I was the one heralding that in 2013, 2014. So it's taken a long time to get here, but we're getting there. 2.5 million actually will allow us, or up to 2.5 million will allow us to formulate a robust and effective building company, which will gain recognition by the way that we're going to put it together. And it's not just me putting it together. As I said the last time we were in here, it's us. It's the Isle of Wight Council. We can't do it on our own, and you know that. We're a minority administration. We look to you, but we've got to be not only ambitious, but have that prudent approach, because this is the Isle of Wight Council taxpayers' money. It's not my money. It's not a private enterprise, and we own it, and that's a fact. So look at that and start to think, okay, 25 million isn't that bad, because we can come back this time next year and go again, and we will. The other thing I was going to...
Thank you, Councillor Stevens.
Why do you do this to me, Chairman?
Councillor Churchman.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to say thank you to Councillor Fuller for acknowledging the efforts of the last Conservative administration in providing so much affordable housing, which is now just coming online. I don't think you can claim you've done this inside an administration of 9 months. However, my real question is the digitalisation. I'm very, very concerned. I will not in any way support a cut to the call centre. This is a lifeline. I have many residents in their 70s and 80s. This is their lifeline. If you cut the call centre, we know exactly what happened a few years ago when the staff were reduced. But also, I would like to know what provision is being made amidst all this IT for those people who do not have broadband, possibly because they can't afford it, some of them who don't want it, and thirdly, just don't understand it. I have residents, as I said, who cannot cope with everything being online. So, Councillor Stevens, please, I beg you, what facilities are you making available for those who do not have broadband? And I would quote a case in point. I had a resident whose alarm failed. And what did she do? In fact, was told to go online. In fact, when she got a neighbour to go online, the number didn't answer anyway. But this is a classic example of people being marginalised because they don't have broadband. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Churchman. This isn't a question time of people, and I'm not going to allow that one. As many people have the opportunity to speak as possible. I would hope that the leader, when she sums up, will be able to respond, and maybe Councillor Stevens can pass her a note if she needs that. Okay? Right, the next one is Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a request. It's really pleasing to hear that our planning department is going to get more funding. I've seen them struggle over the last few years in enforcement. I think they're also limited in helping developers and facilitating developers. I hear an awful lot about we got grant funding from here and grant funding from there, and you know, top up here and top up there. But what we seem to miss is commercial investment. And I know commercial investors, property owners who have walked away because they're beating their head against a brick wall, because nobody wants to listen to them, because they're private. You know, nobody gives them the time of day. I've got a person who came to me, he had planning permission in 2006 for a project. He had planning permission for in 2014 for a project. And he's come back and he says, I want to do this now. And he's told, you can't do it. And I'll just walk away. That's where we're missing out. I really do think we have to facilitate these people. And it's all for our benefit. You know, I'm sure we're not against private money, but at times it seems like it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, and I'm sure Councillor Fuller heard what you said. Councillor Quirk.
A great architect.
Hold on a second, Chris. Can you please not echo from upstairs, otherwise I'll ask you to. Okay, you're here to observe, not to participate. Thank you. Councillor Quirk.
A great architect in history was a chap called Daniel Burnham. He designed the Gridiron Building, the first real skyscraper, and made a wonderful quote: "Make no little plans, they have no magic to stir men's hearts. Make big plans far into the future." Ian, I would suggest that that's what we're trying to do here. And not sort of a little bit at a time, but actually having an aspiration as to where we want to go. And by raising that amount, I wanted it to be 50 million as well. Officers persuaded me to go down. But I really think that if we want to be aspirational, then we should be aspirational in our budget. And we shouldn't constrain it and say, well, we can always do it again another year. Let's start now. Do it now. Be aspirational. There's nothing wrong with the things that we're proposing. And if you support it, we'll support you. And you can actually have a unanimous budget.
Thank you. Just an observation that there was a question by, I think, by Councillor Brading about the Children's Participation Officer, who I noticed is in the gallery, and we've heard nothing from the two Cabinet members for the largest portfolios, Councillor Andre and Councillor Love. So I'm going to invite them now to contribute. Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chairman, and I am very willing to give a response to that. There are over 200 statutory obligations upon us, and as you rightly say, Chairman, we have the second largest portfolio, which is children's services, education and lifelong skills. So we don't have many areas to effect savings. On that particular point, and in response to Councillor Brading, I would like to say that it's vitally important that children's feedback is incorporated in the day-to-day work of children's social workers. It builds trust and helps to build strong and healthy relationships. This type of participation is an integral part of our Isle of Wight approach to social work. We will monitor the impact of this through the Corporate Parenting Board, which I chair, to make sure that we maintain and aggregate the feedback to both develop and improve our services. This model of mainstreaming of children's feedback and participation is now applied very successfully in many other authorities. So there will be checks and balances to make sure that the voice of our young people, and especially our island children, is heard. If I may, Chair, I'd also like to address, we do have high levels of child poverty, far too high. But there are measures that are being taken, such as the holiday activities and food schemes, which are offered ostensibly to those children that are on free school meals, but are made more widely available and are ongoing and have been very successful. And it's also been expanded in the household support grants, which also include fuel, and fuel poverty is another area of concern that needs to be addressed. Yes, we can always do more. Only this afternoon, I actually attended the apprenticeships open day and I spoke to a lot of employers. And I think it's vitally important that we make our young children, our young people aware of the broad range of pathways, over 200 pathways that are available to them, so that we can actually skill them in those areas to actually keep them on this island being successful.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. And I invite Councillor Love. Does he wish to say anything, Councillor Love?
Thank you, Chair. I drove back from Yorkshire today thinking that we would be having a swashbuckling exchange of ideas and really getting into issues to be creative to carry us forward into the future. And actually, I'm a bit disappointed it's a little bit flat. I expected a lot more than what was going to be happening here this evening. But I think there needs to be some context here. First of all, I want to thank my teams within adult social care for the fantastic work that they've done, because the reality and the context is 11 years of austerity and budgets going backwards. And it's this government that has put us in an almost impossible position. And so, whilst I don't like the word palatable, to me it's a really nasty, horrible taste. There are things that we all don't like having to do because government continues to take money away from us. 3 million this year and 6 million in the next 2 years. That is a reality, that is a fact, and that's what we've got to face up against. This budget actually it's not perfect, but it's a stepping stone forward to change. And we talk about investing to transform so that we can make savings further down the line. And that's what this budget is. It's a way forwards. It's something different. It's something creative. And for me, poverty comes first, second and third in everything. because I've experienced it in the past, but that isn't reality in today's society. So I am going to be supporting this budget put forward by this administration, and I say this every year. I just wish that we could do a lot more working together to try and come up with a true Isle of Wight Council budget instead of, you know, a one-sided kind of way forward. And I'm really pleased that Councillor Jordan took the time to go across and do some consultation on the other side. So I thank you for that. And I'm sorry that I've been a little bit out of it for the last few days. I've had some personal things to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Love. Is there anybody else? I've got an empty list. Okay, I'm just going to say a few words myself from the chair, also as a Isle of Wight councillor for a ward that is the most deprived. Okay, Councillor Medland.
Thank you, Chairman. I was only a brief, just thought that this debate, I don't think it's really making it clear the difference between the two positions. I like Councillor Love, I'm very much in favour of this proposed budget of the Alliance. And I just want to point out why we're critical, I think, of the proposals being suggested opposite. So I'm just going back to the suggestions that are being made. For example, you know, we are applying, I think, for as much money as we can for housing, and we have got a limitation on 1 year about how we progress that. I mean, the work is already there. Asking for more money is a nice idea, but it just seems slightly impractical. We are already seeking to employ more planning staff through reducing the number of locum staff, you know, hired in staff. We're keeping the call centre staff. They're being redeployed because apparently they're not needed so much anymore. This is more my understanding from the paperwork and what I've learned. And we've also got external funding for the additional trees. And I think 500,000 might be a little bit, was it 500,000 trees? It might be a little bit difficult to find public land for 500,000 trees. And we've also got extra funding for rights of way. So in all these areas are all lovely ideas, but we're already progressing that agenda. And I'm not sure how practical it is to take it that much further. I just want to bring out that difference, Chairman.
Thank you. And it was a valiant attempt, Councillor Medland, because I was beginning to wonder how much difference there is in this room tonight, because there isn't a lot. And this is, you know, the 17th budget meeting I've sat in, and I've never known a one that is quite so stale, to be frank. Well, maybe that's a good thing, I don't know. Councillor Jordan now wishes to contribute.
Thank you, Chair. Blessing me, and took a little longer than he should have done, and got buzzed out. So I just wanted to add something that I believe he may have been of saying it, but I've not taken words from it, but I will say them anyway. And that is that the proposal that the Conservatives are making to take money out for their budget proposal, of course, will come out of the housing company, and it would make that company the very thing that Councillor Quirk referred to as about get going. It's actually kind of ironic after 4 years of them getting going. We've come and taken over the administration and getting going. But the operation of that housing company would be severely affected and impacted to the point where it might not be operational. It would be absolutely the opposite of what we're trying to do. It makes no sense. So I think Councillor Caesars was going to add that in his part and beat out. So I thought I'd help him along the road, Ian. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Is there anybody else? I'm not going to allow you in. If I start speaking, that's it. Okay? Right, because I have a right to say something as well, even though I'm sat up here. Yeah, as I say, I think it's been quite a stale debate, sadly. I don't know what that says. There seems to be quite a lot of unanimity across the chamber about a lot of what is proposed by the Alliance administration. Obviously, some important differences. I'm quite surprised that really agreement couldn't have been reached across the council chamber if everybody is really committed to delivering as much affordable housing as possible, because of course that is the main focus of everything that I do as a councillor. This is only the second time I haven't brought a budget amendment to Budget Council. I did have one prepared with Mr Ward and Kerry Hubbleday, and thanks for their efforts on that regard, but I decided not to submit it in the end. Mine would have sought to reduce the percentage increase, because I still don't think there's an awareness of how tough it's going to be in the future, particularly in a ward like mine, the most deprived ward on the Isle of Wight, for people with the energy crisis, with the cost of living crisis, etc. I was going to look for a 1.99% to bring it down a little. I chose in the end not to do so. I'm also a little puzzled, and I didn't hear that from the regeneration member, as to what this cultural centre is on Newport Quay. I thought we already had a cultural centre on Newport Quay. It's called the Quay Arts Centre, a very well-liked building, organisation, etc. And it just seems to me it's yet another attempt to bring in a new building for the Records Office. And how many times have I heard that over my years on this council? And I believe it when I see it. I was concerned about I asked Councillor Andre to address the issue of the Children's Participation Officer. I hear what she says, the proof will be in the pudding. I'm not going to say anything further, though. It's you know, depending on how you take your debates. It wasn't, Carl Love, it wasn't, you know, full of fire and brimstone. And I've seen some of those over the years, and they're quite enjoyable. But we'll see what happens. So now it's only 6:30, so we're going very well compared to the schedule I allowed, and I've finished on 3 minutes. So I'm going into chair mode now. I was going to have a break fairly soon, but I'm not going to do it now because I think we're in the flow of the budget. So we'll get this all out of the way, then we'll have a short break. So the next part of the debate is the opportunity for the two proposers to sum up, to respond to anything that's been said in the debate. That's said in reverse order. So it's over to Councillor Robertson, who has 5 minutes. Joe.
Chair, thank you. Councillor Love spoke very eloquently once he got his views of the government out of the way and asked that we could all work together. Well, here's the opportunity. Here's a set of budget amendments that have faced very little criticism. And Councillor Love, it wasn't until you spoke that suddenly two of your colleagues realised they had a bit of a problem with our budget amendments. Councillor Medland said 40 million drawdown facility was too much. Fine, don't draw it down. It won't be spent. There's nothing wrong with being aspirational, certainly not for the purposes of working together. And then Councillor Jordan spoke up and decided that Councillor Stevens actually wanted to say something. And Councillor Jordan said £2.5 million was needed for the company that will run the housing. If that's right, Councillor Jordan, let's hope you can come back next year and show that that £2.5 million has been spent. I think it seems absolutely extraordinary that you would be able to spend that sort of money on setting up a housing company and financing it when there are no spades even in the ground. But you will be able to prove me wrong next year. So here's the opportunity, Chair, to work together. Councillor Jarman has said he wants to work together on our proposals. Let's do it now. Vote for our amendment, or we'll vote for your budget. And we finally got that done for the first time since this council has become a unitary authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. And the final summing up is by the Leader of the Council, Councillor P.C. Wilcox. You have 5 minutes.
I'll be brief. Our alliance has dealt with the hand they've been given and brought forward a budget that enshrines prudence and optimism. It protects frontline services and invests to overcome the considerable challenges with homelessness, poverty, education, adult and children's services. This is about renewal, regeneration and strengthened positive relationships with town, parish and community councils. It establishes a new positive direction for our residents. They deserve it, as do businesses and for our council. I hope we can be proud to support this budget together. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to the voting section. Can I just, from the chair, formally ask the leader of the council whether she would accept the Tory amendment rather than go into a division on this?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Therefore, can I ask you to formally move your budget? Just need to say you propose it.
I propose.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Jarman. We will now move to the Conservative amendment. Would you like to formally move it, Councillor Robertson?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
And a seconder, Councillor Brading. We will now go to a named vote, and the monitoring officer will conduct that. Chris.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Members, we're voting on the Conservative budget proposal, the amendment, and I'll read out each name, and if you could please indicate clearly whether you're for, against or abstain. As I say, we're considering at this present time the Conservative budget amendment. Councillor P.C. Wilcox.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Adams. Against. Councillor Andre.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Bacon.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Dorr.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Downer. Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Against.
Councillor Jarman.
Against on this occasion, and I hope in the future that can change.
Can you just vote, Councillor Jarman? We don't need speeches. Thank you.
Councillor Jones-Evans, please.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Jordan.
Against.
Against, thank you. Councillor Lever.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Lilly.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Love.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Lucioni.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Medland.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Pitcher.
Abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. Councillor Quigley.
Against.
Against. Councillor Beston. For. Councillor Brading.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Churchman.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Drew.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis. Thank you. Councillor Hastings.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mosdell.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Outlaw.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Peace.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Quirk.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Redrup.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Spink.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Christensen.
Against.
Against. And Councillor Brodie, please. For. Okay, thank you. Chair, the votes, as far as I can understand, there have been 19 votes for, 19 votes against and 1 abstention. It's over to you, Chair.
In which case, I cast my vote for the Conservative amendment. Therefore, it is carried. Move to the substantive motion, which is the original Administration Alliance proposal as now amended by the Conservative amendment. Again, this will be a named vote. I'll pass on to the monitoring officer again, Mr. Potter. Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. And again, to clarify, I'm going to read out your names as before, and if you could indicate for, against or abstain. And this is the Alliance budget proposals as amended. The amendment was carried on the casting vote. So if you could now please clearly indicate for, against or abstain.
Could we have some order? We're in the middle of a named vote. Some respect from the Alliance group, please.
Councillor P.C. Wilcox.
Really? It's a big decision we're making for the island people. For.
Thank you. Councillor Adams. Against. Councillor Andre.
Against.
Against. Councillor Bacon. For. Councillor Dorr. For. Councillor Downer. For. Councillor Fuller.
Against.
Against. Councillor Jarman.
For.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
For.
Councillor Jordan. For. Councillor Lever.
For.
Councillor Lilly.
For.
Councillor Love.
For.
Councillor Lucioni. For. Councillor Medland. For. Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Garrett. Against. Thank you. Councillor Pitcher. Against. Councillor Quigley.
For.
Councillor Beston. Thank you. Councillor Brading. Thank you. Councillor Churchman. Thank you. Councillor Drew. Thank you. Councillor Ellis. Thank you. Councillor Hastings. Thank you. Councillor Hendry. Thank you. Councillor Mosdell. Thank you. Councillor Nicholson. Thank you. Councillor Oliver. Thank you. Councillor Outlaw. Thank you. Councillor Peace. Thank you. Councillor Price. Thank you. Councillor Quirk. Thank you. Councillor Redrup. Thank you. Councillor Robertson. Thank you. Councillor Spink. Thank you. Councillor Ward. Thank you. Councillor Christensen.
For.
And Councillor Brodie. Thank you. So I'll start again for. Yep, 39. Yep, that's it, Chair. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, the substantive motion as amended was carried by 34 votes to 5. Therefore, that is the budget for the Isle of Wight Council for the next financial year. Thanks for the debate on that. We'll now have a 15-minute break because we're well ahead of my schedule. And I'd like you all back dead on at 7. I'm not leaving the room, so you don't have to stand up for me.
Thanks very much. And
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your promptness. I'll reopen the full council meeting. We'll move on to agenda item 8, which is the interim arrangements following the impending departure of the Chief Executive. We have a report, agenda item 8, which is on I haven't got the correct page, so I can't help you in that. It's, what page is it? Yes, it was circulated afterwards. Sorry. Yes, yeah. We have a report which has the Director of Corporate Services name on and the Leader of the Council. So I'm going to hand over to the Leader of the Council to present this report. Councillor P.C. Wilcox.
As we know, our Chief Exec is moving on to hopefully bigger and better things, and a very good new experience for him. And we have proposed in our paper to put Wendy Pereira as the now acting deputy in the position. I hope this will provide continuity and confidence for staff. And so I propose, that's our proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Yes. Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Obviously a keen supporter of Mrs. Pereira. So you know what the recommendations are. They're in paragraph 3, 4 and 5 of the report. I'll read them through just for everybody in the gallery in case I haven't seen that. Wendy Pereira, the Assistant Chief Executive and Director of Strategy, be designated and appointed to undertake the statutory role of Head of Paid Service on a temporary basis, such appointment taking effect immediately upon the Chief Executive's departure. Secondly, that Wendy Pereira, same title, be appointed to act as the Interim Chief Executive with all the roles and powers of the post of Chief Executive, such appointment taking effect immediately upon the Chief Executive's departure. And finally, that these interim arrangements be reviewed no more than 12 months following their commencement. Okay, that's been formally proposed and seconded. Are there any comments? Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you. And just want to sort of take just a moment to thank our current Chief Executive for all the work and the guidance and his many years of service to the Isle of Wight Council. It will be remembered, and all your advances will continue, I'm sure. So from The Sound of Music, they say that when God closes the door, he opens a window. So hopefully your window is nice and bright, and opening the door to Mrs. Pereira as well, who's again someone who's served the council a long time and has got very good experience, a very good strategic head on her, and I really look forward to working with her in the coming months. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brading.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to really emphasise the point, having been part of the last cabinet for the last 4 years, we've been very fortunate to have such a brilliant chief executive to work with. He's very supportive, cares a lot about the island, as does Wendy Pereira, and I think she'd be perfect in the interim arrangements to cover for John, and I wish him all the success, and I hope Sunderland get a few more points. Thank you. Sorry, Chair.
You will be. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just want to echo the thanks to John Metcalfe for his hard work in the council. I don't bother officers or anyone very much as a councillor. I do my own thing and engage with who I need to, but I often copy in John, and if there's something to say, he comes back super fast. When I have gone to him with anything in the 9 years that I've been a councillor, he's always come back to me within the same 24 hours, whether that's been Sunday night or Saturday night at the Isle of Wight Festival. Whenever I've needed to ask him something, he's always answered. And I just want to thank him and wish him well on his next journey. And also to say that I think appointing Wendy Pereira as a interim is an excellent choice. You know, let's look forward possibly to her being the person that's finally appointed as the chief executive. Who knows? Thank you.
Councillor Robertson.
I'd just like to add my thanks, Chair, to John Metcalfe for all that he's done for the island and wish him well in the future. I haven't been in this leadership role very long, but you instantly got in touch with me, John, and introduced me to all the people that I might need to speak to. But I particularly want to thank you on Monday for sorting out that thorny IT issue I had.
Councillor Dole.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf, oh wait, that was quick. I would, wearing my Armed Forces Champion hat, like to thank John for all his input over the years supporting the Armed Forces communities over here. Your name often comes up in a very positive light, I have to say, and I'm sure Councillor Ward will support me on this. Armed Forces Day, you've been very helpful in getting that together as well, and I'm sure you're going to be a huge asset to the Armed Forces communities up in Cumbria. Also to Wendy Pereira, obviously many know her husband as he was in the RAF, so hey, sort of, yeah. But welcome her as well. But John, thank you very much for flying the flag. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chair. I've known John for years. You know, I feel that you've been a permanent fixture with the Isle of Wight Council. You've been around longer than probably I have. So, we wish you well. It'll be sad to see you go. And Wendy as well, absolutely brilliant. I've seen Wendy rise through the ranks of the planning department, and often she used to sort of like bash my head against a brick wall when I used to get things wrong, which sometimes I do. So yeah, congratulations, John. Hope you have a brilliant time in Cumbria. You will be sorely missed, and grateful thanks to Wendy as well. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Quigley, Richard. Oh, mate, I'll let you go first.
Just really, because John's looking really awkward, so I thought I'd add to the awkwardness. Even though I've not known him that long, I'd just like to be really obsequious in my gratefulness. Officers aren't allowed to be political. And I think one thing I got from John is I wouldn't be able to tell you his politics at all, which I think is testament to the way he behaves, but also the way he would encourage and listen to topics that might feel a bit left of centre or left field or out of the ordinary, and listen and help me develop them. Also with Wendy Ellis, I think is an excellent interim relation, if maybe a permanent one. Again, wouldn't know Wendy's politics, and she works very hard with any topics we bring forward. So good luck, Mike. Enjoy driving up and down the country, and keep in touch.
Councillor Garrett, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. First, on the substance of the paper, I certainly support Wendy Pereira as an interim chief executive. Hope this will make sure, particularly events tonight, where we are clearly much more working together than we might have expected, that the appointment process will be one in which everyone in this chamber is invited to offer their thoughts on the person that we would be looking for next, and the way in which that person's specification is set out. Because there are great challenges ahead for the Isle of Wight. For John, my question to you, John, on taking up this new position is just what exactly is your hypothesis? That is a question that John always put to me. Every wash-up meeting after corporate scrutiny met, and every meeting before we've then met again, when I said that we should be scrutinising something, he always was, what is your hypothesis? It's a very good question. I hope you use it a lot up in Cumbria, but above all, I hope you find great satisfaction in the job that you will be doing, and have great memories of the work that you have done here on the Isle of Wight, and that you can reflect on it and see some things within that, which, albeit a local government officer rather than an elected member, councillor, that you would say that is your legacy. And that's all you can hope for, and I will hope for that for you.
Thank you. Councillor Love.
Thank you, Chair. And I wholeheartedly endorse Wendy Pereira for moving forward into the position, and look forward to that. And as for yourself, John, you are definitely going to need some long johns going up there, without any doubt, because it's a very beautiful but cold part of the country. But hopefully from that, there'll be some seeds that you can sow for the Isle of Wight up there, and that hopefully we will gain an additional friend through the Cumbria Council to our council, helping to enrich us and carry us forward.
I don't think you realise, Councillor, where John and I come from, we wear vests in the winter. And if we're from Newcastle, we wear nothing on top in the winter. And I'm not from Newcastle, I hate to do, and I don't think John is.
That's because you can't afford it.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Stevens?
Thank you. I was looking over my shoulder to see if I was going to be usurped again. But yeah, John, since 2001, when I came in, you've been there, and you've always been there. And in being there, you've always been fair. And it didn't matter from what side of the chamber you came from. You treated us all the same, even-handed, and giving us advice. That goes a long way with me, because sometimes people are biased to a degree. You've never shown a bias. You've always shown respect for the members, respect for your officers. And to my mind, you've left a big space here in the Isle of Wight Council. When you move to Cumbria, you'll have a task on there, and you know you will, with the way that things are going on, but you're going to be equal to that, I've no doubt. So I wish you well, and keep your phone switched on, because I'll be giving you a bell or two to see where we're going and what we're doing, and get that advice from you as you always come forward, and you did offer that. So we'll take you up on it. But likewise, what an opportunity to have an islander again coming in with knowledge of the island and the perspective of the island in Wendy Pereira. Now, I think, you know, Wendy's been with the authority for many a year. I've been here since 2001, so, you know, probably been about the same time as the officers I'm speaking about. But what I would say is that it's that knowledge and the continuity that Wendy will bring to this authority and this council. And in the last few months, being a cabinet member, it's been quite a comfort to have someone who has the ability to step up and step forward. She's a very talented officer, very talented lady, and I think that she's going to do us very, very well. But it's great to have that continuity. And tonight's proved it. If we can work together, and if we can talk together, talking is the first thing, and respect each other, I think that goes a very, very long way. Chairman, I'd just like to wish John all the best for his new position in Cumbria, but I also would like to, at the same time, welcome Wendy into the Chief Executive's role as an interim, and she's going to do a damn good job, I know that. So thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Stevens stole my speech, but there we go. We've been around a long time, and John has been there all the time for us. And to see him go is a sad occasion, certainly for me, and I'm sure for Ian as well. But we wish him all the best for the future. You're cracking. We've seen you go up the ladder here, and you're doing a cracking job as chief exec, and I'm sure you will go on and do a cracking job up in the north somewhere, isn't it? I don't know where it is, but you know. So, my personal thanks to you, John. You have always been there when I've had a question, an issue, or whatever. I had no compunction on knocking on your door or sending you an email, and you never sent me away with a flea in my ear or anything like that. But you know, and you gave me straightforward answers, and thank you for that. I will miss you, but on the plus side, it's great to see Wendy. When I was a cabinet member several years ago, and Wendy was one of my heads of service. And I said to Wendy, why aren't you a director? And she looked at me and she said, you tell me. And it was great when she became assistant chief exec, and now to see her put the crown on, if you like. I know it's only a temporary appointment, but I particularly would like to see her keep that crown. Thank you.
Councillor Pitcher.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo some of the words about appointing Wendy as the interim chief executive. I think that's absolutely the right thing to do, and I wish her well in that. I remember the interview for John at Lakeside in Wootton when he had to present to us all. Well, I'm sure he'd rather forget it. So I saw him take his first steps on this road, and it's nice to see where it's taken him. Certainly in my mind, and you'll probably turn red at this blush, but I've seen you grow as a person and grow into the role and become a very good chief executive. And I think Cumbria are gaining one of our best, and I wish you well up there.
Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to say I support Wendy, and perhaps I should also say it's just as well we got the budget dealt with quite quickly, so we can all say what we think about John. And I think the number of comments just say an awful lot. I was just going to send you a letter, but as everyone else has said something, I think I have to join in. I'm no fan of meetings that just turn into something resembling award ceremonies. And you don't look as if you are at the moment either. But John, I worked with you when I was leader for just over 2 years, and your support was unfailing. And so if we are making an analogy to an awards ceremony, I think you get the Lifetime Achievement Award. So thank you.
Okay, I'm going to pull this together in a minute.
In this new...
You're all going to have hang on, John. You're all going to get an opportunity to say goodbye to John. He's still going to be here for another month and a bit, aren't you? Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say anything here. I'll go and tell him good riddance later on. But, you know, it's, I'm going to allow 2 more in, and then I'm pulling it to an end for a vote. Sorry, 3 more. 3 people have signalled, OK? First one is Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. I've worked with John throughout the council through all the years that I was there in different leisure services, and then as chief exec, and it's been really good from that side, but also now with being on the councillor side, and I feel like maybe it's a bit personal that you've left just as I become a councillor. But no, honestly, I wish you well and look forward to this journey with working with Wendy, and yeah, it's exciting times. Thank you.
Councillor Jarman.
Thank you. I'd like to wish John well. We've only known each other for 9 months, and I know it's been a difficult journey at times, but it's through those difficult journeys that sometimes you learn the most. And I'd like to thank John because I've learned a lot from him, a lot of detail, and attention to that is clearly going to pay me very well in the future. And I hope he can take some comfort from that element with him, and I sincerely wish him well in his next wonderful venture.
And finally, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Chairman. In this new atmosphere of accord, I'd like to agree with everything that everybody has said. And I wish John well. He's always been there when you need him, treats everybody the same and respectfully. And welcome, Wendy. As you noticed, I didn't waste any time at all to secondary in.
Okay, thank you, John. Right, then I'll just put that to the vote. It's the 3 recommendations all together that I read out. Indicative vote. All those in favour, please show. Anybody against? Any abstentions? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 9, report of the monitoring officer. This is our regular agenda item to allow groups in particular to alter their membership of committees and other bodies. The only ones that we've been advised of in advance are 2 changes from the Conservative group. There were 2 new members to join Paul Brading on the Appointments and Employment Committee there, Councillor Susie Ellis and Councillor Joe Robertson. Does the Alliance Group have anything they wish to inform of us now? No? Okay, therefore it's just a question of noting it, which there's no debate or voting against. Okay, so can we just note that? Okay? All right, thank you very much.
So through you, Chair.
Yes, yeah.
Just to formally suggest a motion, just to underline the actual nature of the appointments. That's those named in Appendix 1 to this report be appointed to the committees set out in that appendix. So that will encapsulate the changes which have been put forward by the Conservative group in terms of the changes mentioned to the Appointments and Employment Committee, which involves the Councillor Robertson and Councillor Susie Ellis being permanent members of the Appointments and Employment Committee. And obviously, technically, it would need to be formally proposed, seconded and voted in order to ensure the appointments are duly made. Thank you.
Well, I propose that. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Quirk. All those in favour, please show. Anybody against? Abstentions? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Finally, item 10, up to 30 minutes, member question time. Councillor Robertson.
A question to the leader, please, Chair. At the beginning, with your leader's report, you went into some detail about the things you've been doing for people in poverty, for women, children, vulnerable people in your ward, those in the social care system. Despite what's been in the press in the last 4 or 5 days, you didn't take that opportunity to say a single thing about ethnic diversity and racial equality and the importance of people from ethnic minority backgrounds to you, this island, this council and the country. We've all seen the image that you posted on Facebook in November last year. In the foreground, your dogs are asleep, and in the background is a display of racially offensive dolls. Yesterday, a friend of yours put on Facebook that you've had a collection of golly dolls for as long as she can remember. As leader of the council, please can you explain whether those dolls were displayed in your home in November? You shared the offensive image in public. Silence is not an acceptable answer. Thank you.
I've had no prior notice of this question and will not answer because it is not a matter about budget or policy, nor something for which this council has responsibility.
I would disagree, Councillor P.C. Wilcox. The policy of this council regarding equality and diversity is fundamental to what we do as a council. I think it's incumbent upon you to provide a response to Councillor Robertson.
Point of order, I'd like to vote we suspend this meeting because I'm witnessing harassment of fellow members. I think it's an absolutely disgraceful behaviour.
I'm not. Will you shut up there or you will be removed? You will be removed unless you shut up. You will be removed unless you shut up.
I will review what's been said, Councillor Robertson, and give you a written response.
Yes, you have the right. Would you be quiet, please? I will adjourn the meeting and clear you all out, and then we will continue. Any more intervention, and I will adjourn till you're all gone. And I will not be threatened by you, sir. I don't know who you are. I think you are. You, yes, you. I will report you to the police.
Misogyny is a hate crime.
And what about racism? Ethnic minorities?
Racism.
What about ethnic minorities?
I'm adjourning the meeting until the public gallery is cleared, until people calm down. But that's it, it's adjourned. Okay, I'm now going to go back to the start of members' question time after that interruption, and I'm going to ask Councillor Robertson to ask his question again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We've all seen the image that you posted on Facebook in November last year, Leader. In the foreground are your dogs asleep.
Sorry, Joe, will you... Councillor Jones, you can't behave. Can you please leave? Okay? The next time I will adjourn again and I will ask you to leave. Thank you. Joe, would you like to start again?
Thank you. We've all seen the image that you posted on Facebook in November last year, Leader. In the foreground are your dogs asleep, and in the background is a display of racially offensive dolls. Yesterday, a friend of yours posted online that you've had a collection of Golly dolls for as long as she can remember. As Leader of the Council, please can you explain whether those dolls were displayed in your home in November? You shared the offensive image in public. Silence is not an acceptable answer.
Thank you, Joe. And that's over to you, Leader, Councillor PC Wilcox.
I have had no prior notice of this question and will not answer because it is not a matter about budget or policy or something which the council has responsibility.
And I entirely disagree with that, Councillor PC Wilcox. If equality and diversity is not crucial to the policies of this council, I would be seriously concerned in the 21st century.
And once again, I will give you a written response.
A reply.
I will give a written response.
Okay.
May I have a
A
follow-up?
supplementary, Councillor Robertson.
A racially offensive post by a council leader with no explanation and no apology, despite ample opportunity. If you were the leader of a London Borough Council, you would have had to have resigned a long time ago. Do you think the ethnic minority population on the Isle of Wight are too small in number to be bothered about?
Councillor PC Wilcox.
I have had no prior notice of this question and will not answer because it is not a matter about budget or policy, nor something for which the council has responsibility.
I would remind you, Councillor PC Wilcox, what I just said. Can I suggest, Councillor Robertson, that you put your two questions in writing, submit them to Councillor PC Wilcox, and I, as chair, will expect them to be answered within the required period of time. Thank you. The next person I had showing their hand that I saw was Councillor Susie Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I also have a question for the leader. I almost didn't ask it, but after the abuse that was hurled at us from the public gallery, I am going to go ahead. Leader, do you recognise that golly dolls, such as those seen in an image shared on your Facebook page in November of last year, are offensive? And will you apologise for causing offence?
PC Wilcox.
Once again, I've had no prior notice of this question and will not answer because it is not a matter about budget or policy, nor something for which the council has responsibility.
Councillor PC Wilcox, a little tedious and a little worrying for you to keep denying that equality and diversity questions are not part of the policy frameworks of this council. I find that deeply disturbing and actually only seems to add to my mind, the concern I have about this whole issue. Will you please, Councillor, have you got a supplementary firstly, Councillor Ellis?
No, thank you, Chair. I'd only wish to ask again.
Okay, thank you. Can you put that in writing, your question in writing, so as the Councillor PC Wilcox will be able to respond, so she knows precisely what you asked?
Yes,
thank you very much. Are there any other member questions? Councillor Drew.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to ask this, but I think given what was a scandalous display in the public gallery just now, this gives me a great deal of concern for the chilling effect on democracy. I appreciate, and I think actually every councillor on this side of the chamber does not think that the leader is racist in any way. And I would pay tribute, in fact, to the fact she is very much well respected within the island community. This isn't about her as an individual. This is about democracy and about the representation of the people. We've heard very eloquently from members today talking about, Councillor Garrett said that he was going to be relentless in the prosecution of supporting poverty and making sure that the Alliance are held to account. This is something that we need to be very careful about indeed. So my question to the leader is, I appreciate You may not want to answer tonight. I appreciate you may not wish to answer in a public forum, but is there some way that you can be accountable to the democratic will of this council and ask a question which I think is of significant import to a number of people who will be offended by this, not because of yourself, not because of your actions, but simply the representation of you as the leader, as an office. It's got nothing to do with you as an individual. Can you come back to us and at least give some undertaking, perhaps written undertaking, to give an account so that you can distance the council from this issue and that you can maintain democracy?
Councillor Peasy-Wilcox.
Thanks, Councillor Drew, for being reasonable. I think you must have secret insight into my family is all I can say, because yeah, that you must have some kind of insight. Please, could you send that as a written, and I will give you a written response because it deserves it. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary at all, Councillor Drew? No. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you. I've got a question for the Deputy Leader of the Council, please, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Stevens, will you be able to tell us a bit more about your plans to alleviate the dreadful loss, or not lack of housing on this island, please?
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I can. I can actually say that we are looking at, as has been in the budget paper, £750,000 into looking at empty properties, and this actually, chimes quite well with the way that we're moving with trying to bring our island and its building fabric, such as in areas such as Sandown has been mentioned in the past. We have the same in Ryde, but what we want to do is to try and make sure that we can take a bit of a firmer hold with the sometimes empty properties, but sometimes occupied properties that are in a bad state of repair. So I'm interested in that side of things, but also, once again, now we've got near my 50 million, access to 50 million, which the amendment shows. It's the sun is shining and the birds are singing in the trees, but there's a lot of hard work to get where we're going to go. All I'll say is that if we spend 40 million pound in a year, then we'll be very fortunate. Thankfully, that's not going to happen because we're going to be prudent. We're going to be strong. We'll work together. We're going to make sure that, as I said, the open dialogue with Councillor Quigley all the time about housing and property, and indeed brownfield sites, and indeed the accusation that Councillor Stevens is not interested in Camp Hill. Camp Hill is not available. When we know that that's available, and indeed our officers are still involved with looking at the way that we can have first bite of the cherry, if you like, or pick of the cherry, we'll be there. But we have limited and finite resources in our authority. You all know it. And if we're going to be chasing the Holy Grail somewhere, when we've got tangible assets elsewhere that we're cleaning up at this moment in time, we've got the brownfield site funding to actually clean up. We've chosen 3 sites to do it on. Those are the areas that we've got to go into. And Councillor Jones-Evans, we're looking at so many ways of tackling what we need to be tackling, and I can.
Okay, Councillor Stevens.
No, I haven't finished
Councillor
yet.
Stevens.
Not again.
Councillor Stevens, you've told us sufficient about this. I'm going to bring it to an end now because I know you can go on for hours.
That's very kind
okay.
of you.
I wasn't.
Housing is, Chairman, with all due respect, Chairman, your interest is lying somewhere else. Your interest is lying somewhere else. My interest is in housing the homeless.
I am not.
Housing the homeless is a priority.
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you.
I'm not interested in a debate with you.
I'm interested in housing the homeless.
The fact that I voted for a £40 million, which is 15 million than you originally voted for, will demonstrate that. So don't say ridiculous comments. Right. Councillor Garrett. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Stevens, for that answer. I was particularly, I was waiting for you to mention it, but I was wondering if you could tell me a bit, because I'm very interested in this, in the relocatable housing, what sort of housing it will be, and who they're for, please.
Most definitely. Once again, this is for people in temporary accommodation at this time and homelessness. It's a very worthwhile
Stevens, we know what they're for. Can you just answer the question directly?
I'm answering the question,
or I'm going
Chairman.
to shut you
Chairman,
down.
I am answering the question to the best of my ability, I'm afraid. And now, I can only say what the modular home, what the...
Stevens, you're not addressing it. I know what the game is.
Chairman,
will you shut up?
You're a wonderful chairman, but to be quite honest, if you want to know about homelessness,
Councillor Stevens,
come and
will
see
you
me
shut
privately.
up?
Thank you.
Councillor Garrett.
I'm sorry, Chair, but I asked a question and Councillor Stevens was answering it. You interrupted him constantly, so he keep losing his thread. And you know very well yourself when someone interrupts you and you're in force of answering a question or debating, and how disruptive that is. So I please you should just give Councillor Stevens the opportunity to answer my question, which a lot of people are very interested in.
Would you leave the room, please, or I'm going to adjourn it?
I'm not going to leave.
Right. Well, I'm not going to ask you to leave because I know what your game is. Councillor Garrett.
My game is making sure that we have houses for the people on this island, and I'm not interested in your games.
Thank you, Chair. First, it would be remiss of me not to make some comment about the earlier question, and I hope you'll bear with me. I'm a person who believes in investigation, explanation, understanding, forgiveness if necessary and appropriate, and redemption. So I will be very interested to hear the Leader of the Council's explanation to Councillor Robertson. It does disturb me. Those images did disturb me, and I am sure the Leader of the Council understands why. My question, though, is about Camp Hill, and you may direct my question to the appropriate Cabinet member. I would like whichever Cabinet member responds to this. Now that we have a budget as amended, which seeks an independent review of brownfield land, can we make sure, although it must be an independent review, that it is understood that Camp Hill is not an entirely built upon and derelict site, which we can fantastically place all the building that we don't want on green fields on the other way on Camp Hill. But indeed, actually, the Camp Hill site, which is a shorthand for a very large area, which does include green fields. So can we make sure that that review, although we can't constrain it, does recognise that Camp Hill has a significant greenfield area, which we should be seeking to protect as much as we might do those greenfields in, say, Bembridge or Freshwater or any other part of this island.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens, briefly, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be brief. If we're within the amendment, there was an element of talking about independent review, etc. One will assume that that will be independent of the local authority, probably costing something with regard to consultancy, but that will be dealt with through that channel and not through me or members within here. We will wait for the consultant's report, which will be independent.
Very much for your brevity, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Mosdell.
Thank you. My question to the leader, and it'd be helpful if Councillor Jordan got off his phone for a minute while I make this question, if that's okay, please, because it relates to him as well. I have had a request from the chair of Newchurch Parish Council for the leader and Colin Rowland and for Councillor Jordan to come and meet with us to listen to our issues regarding the issues we've got with the weight restriction being removed without us actually being consulted. The investment's already taken place. We had an email saying it was going to be removed, but the Alliance did say that they were going to be open and transparent and involve parish councils and ward councillors. And actually, there is nobody who knows the local ward issues like a ward councillor and the parish council. So it's a simple request. Please, could we have that meeting to discuss that road order before it's withdrawn, please? Thank you.
Should I direct that to Councillor Jordan?
No, I'm okay.
All right,
I'd like to
okay.
say, yes, please, could you make sure we can have lunch in Newchurch as well, please, at the same time?
Okay.
So do it around that time, be very nice. I'm okay to meet, thank you.
Thank you.
Next one, yourself, Councillor P.C. Wilcox, have a question?
Oh, yes, I do. I didn't know whether I was allowed to ask a question. Councillor Nicholson, can you give us an update on where we are? I really value what you are doing in health scrutiny, seriously, for this island and the people. Could you give us a verbal update? I think sometimes things get missed, too much paperwork and things get... So could you just give us an update? I'm particularly interested in the dentistry and where we are with that, please. Thank you.
Yes, Leader. I'll do my best. Health scrutiny is working on a number of fronts. Dentistry is a prime concern. We're appalled at the lack of meaningful response. When I say meaningful, intelligible response from NHS England, the current commissioners of dentistry, who have disgracefully neglected the concerns and treatment of Isle of Wight patients for many years, as you know yourself, Leader, as a former campaigner for dentistry. We're also concerned that there seems to be a standoff in transition of dental services to the new integrated care partnership, where they're not allowed to formally review the commissioning of dentistry when that comes about to them, because of some etiquette or some rules or something. I mean, it's all set for a disaster, I'm afraid. There's something dreadfully wrong. Nobody seems to listen to dentists. There's something dreadfully wrong with the commissioning model for dentistry, which works under some bizarre dental unit system that very few people, including myself, fail to understand. And I think that probably goes along with dentists as well. It's like trying to untangle a plate of spaghetti when you're dealing with this sort of issue with health services. We also, as the leader will be aware, have concern over the primary care model, and particularly their capacity to cope with the demands of the modern age. We keep increasing our population, and it has never been a matter of material consideration whether the doctor's surgeries can cope. That's always dismissed at planning. And again, you know, the writing's been on the wall for this. We've had particular concerns with certain primary care practices. Some seem to get a better response and better treatment records than others. So there's great inequality with that. A lot of people don't realise that doctor surgeries are actually private businesses. They're not NHS. They are commissioned by the NHS. So there is a lack of parity in service and flexibility in resource. There is a commercial decision that has to be made before accepting types of treatment. I think that's a conflict of interest personally, unless somebody can convince me that that's wrong. And I think it is high time that we consider whether the primary care model of yesteryear is fit for modern purpose. And that's just a question, it's not an opinion. I think, is that good enough, Leader?
Yeah, well done, John.
Thank you, John. Councillor P.C. Wilcox, supplementary.
Councillor Nicholson, thank you for that. You've given a very good understanding. I hope that the press have picked up on that so that they can put something out so that the people know and understand what is coming and what they're now facing and what we're trying to do to alleviate that. I knew that algorithm that they brought in for dentistry back in 2006 completely changed everything. I've been campaigning since 2006 to try and get the right thing back and everything. So sincere thanks for everything you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for that, John. I think I'll bring in Paul in a second. Just reminds me, some years ago, the chairs of scrutiny, etc., used to do a brief written report to full council, so that people knew what they were doing. We lost that some years ago, and I think I would welcome it coming back, to be honest. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you very much, Chair. Is the leader aware of the first island planning strategy briefing taking place at 3:30 on Friday, the 11th of March 2022? I've received your email, Councillor Brodie, and I will be trying to ensure that that is a face-to-face meeting as well as one that is available through Teams. But are you aware of that, Councillor PC Wilcox?
I sure am, and I'm really, really supportive. I can't thank James Brewer enough for going above, beyond, and everything else in trying to bring this to fruition. It's an extremely important document, vital important document to this council. And thank you, Councillor Fuller. I know this has come at personal cost to you with pushing forward with this, and but I knew how passionate you were about the planning. I knew what you had faced over the years, particularly with developments in Gurnard. So I'm absolutely delighted. You were the right person to do this. You were the right person to push it forward. You had a greater understanding than most there. And I look forward to that meeting because very much needed. But our thanks to James Brewer and the rest of the planning staff that have worked tirelessly for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if Councillor Nicholson, in his role, just to thank Councillor Nicholson first for John for the exchange of emails we've had recently. I wonder if he would, in his role as chair of the Health Scrutiny, assist us in bringing further forward the issues of NHS patient travel across on the ferries, so that a system could be put in place if the ferry operators were willing to do that. There have been incidences, as I know you are well aware, John, that patients have returning, particularly after treatment, intrusive treatment, have been unable to travel for various reasons or moved about and bumped off and made to wait. And I wonder if he would help us in our approaches to the ferry companies to try and get a better deal. Just to add, Chair, that part of this process, we're bringing forward policies on parking to enable those people travelling to be able to park their cars free close to the ferry terminal so that they can park for a day or whatever the period is for their treatment. But I wonder if John would commit to helping us some way through that role. Thank you, Chair.
I'd be delighted to, Phil, Councillor Jordan. I've always enjoyed working with you over the many years that we've known each other. This is actually in the Health Scrutiny work plan. It is a major concern. I do feel that health partners could do a little bit more to assist, and I thank you for the information that you've passed us in our exchanges. Thank you.
Councillor Spink.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to ask a question of Councillor Fuller about this briefing in March. It may be my fault and that I've missed it in the diary, but I wasn't aware that there was a briefing on the draft planning strategy in March. So my question is, firstly, what's the date of that, please, so I can put it in my calendar? And secondly, the order of things, if I may say so, do you not agree, should be that before there's a briefing, we should have sight of, that is, the councillors, of the draft plan, together with the formal response to the Task and Finish Group's report on the draft plan, which is still waiting. When I last asked a question, it was debatable at Cabinet whether or not we would have a copy of the draft plan 5-10 days before the meeting in April. Now there's to be a briefing in March. Suddenly, is this plan now going to be available then 2 weeks before the briefing, please?
Would you like me to answer that? Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Councillor Spink. It is my intention to try to get the draft available as soon as we possibly can. I've spoken to officers concerning that, and the problem that we have is within the Constitution, the deadlines are fairly tight. However, I have said to officers I would love to see this out as early as we possibly can, and if we can achieve that, then that would be brilliant.
I have a supplementary, if I may, Chair.
Of course.
I would like an undertaking, please, Councillor Fuller, that there will be no briefing until such time as the full papers that I've referred to are served on all councillors with 5 days notice. So no briefing, please, until all the papers are served 5 days prior to the briefing. I think that's not unreasonable, given that the papers will be 300 pages or more. We do not want a briefing on, if I may say so, opinion as to what the draft plan is going to say. We want to see the draft plan.
Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. I think Mr. Councillor Spink has made his point. You've made your point previously, Peter, and I will do everything that I can to support that. Thank you.
I'm sorry. No, sorry. You only get 2 goes, Councillor Spink. Councillor Pitcher.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is a question for Councillor Jordan, in actual fact. Following on from the news that Island Roads have postponed work on New Road in Wootton Bridge until 2023 from April this year, would he commit to working with myself and the residents group that's affected by the works planned on New Road to come up with a workable solution on how the works should proceed, bearing in mind there's over 100 houses that potentially could be cut off by these works, and the current plan was for them to be cut off all day, every day for 3 months. So and there's businesses down there. We've got 3 large businesses that employ hundreds of people that are tourist businesses that can't afford to be cut off in that way. So a working plan needs to be found. The community are prepared to work with the council to come up with the best possible solution. But will he undertake to consult with me and those residents to come up with a way forward for next year?
Councillor Jordan.
Absolutely. We postponed the works because of the impossible situation there. It'll be impossible next year as well, but nonetheless, it's given us a period of time to work with all with Darryl as the ward councillor there, absolutely, and all of the residents and businesses to try and find the best solution. There's not a solution, it's a cul-de-sac essentially, and the road has to be rebuilt with drainage. But we're working with Island Roads to try and find a solution to minimise the disruption. Absolutely, Darryl, work with you as we have done over the last few weeks on it, and we'll do so through this period to do the best for your community then.
I'm going to ask a question now. Will Councillor Andre accept my thanks for her efforts as both a Cabinet member but also a member of the Health and Wellbeing Board to address adult learning within my ward and also the effort she's made to address child poverty, where we have the highest levels of child poverty, which is the exception to the other members of the Cabinet who are on the Health and Wellbeing Board, for whom I'm still waiting for engagement regarding issues within my ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will accept your thanks. There is more to do, and we do accept that. I'd also like to thank my officers who came very much to the fore and developed this, hopefully, as a pilot project. It's working with other partners, and I think that's the key. It's about partnership working, and I think in this current climate, it will be a very useful pilot. But I'm very fortunate that it was something that we were able to act on. I was very pleased to act on it, but there's